Hi teacher and student, we're group 10 and today we're going to have a presentation on the subject of corruption. China's economic construction has achieved remarkable achievements since the reform and opening up, accompanied by various problems in the process of economic development, among which corruption and anti-corruption have long been focal topics. There are academic discussion on the connotation and extension of corruption from the perspective of political science, economics, and law. Given the scope of the following discussion topic and the established setting of this course, this discussion will adopt one of the most representative definitions of corruption, that's the use of public power for private gain. Most forms of corruption in China are government official corruption, which mainly refers to the use of power by public officials for personal gain, including but not limited to the acceptance for bribes, nepotism, fraud, and other behaviors. It focuses on using the holdings of public power as a platform for rent-seeking and acquiring personal benefits through public resources. With the process of government decentralization reform, operating executive corruption come into view. According to Transparency International, corporate corruption is executive theoretical use of power for personal gain. This includes embezzlement, accepting kickbacks, misusing public resources, misappropriating funds or assets, and other similar actions. It includes using public funds for consumption, extravagance, and wasteful endowment in a more general sense. This is similar to the categorization criteria for Sheng Yumin, who classified corruption into two types: governmental power corruption related to the public power of government official, and agency corruption related to the public power of government exercise of agents of publicly owned enterprise who are given the rights to use public resources. There is also a focus on the institutional and moral attributes of corrupt behavior, which are divided into two forms: government corruption that violates formal rules such as laws and regulations, and social corruption that violates virtuous values such as professional ethics, transparency, and fairness. Regardless of the classified criteria, it is not difficult to find that corruption in China mainly exists in the political bureaucracy, which is one of the prominent features of corruption. The data on the cases of foreign officials at the prefecture level in Anhui province show that about 70% of the corruption officials come of the administrative field. In addition, the democratic characteristic of corruption personnel show that they are mainly highly educated male. The age of first corruption is younger, and they are corrupted while they are promoted. Corruption is not permitted because of its destructive negativity towards laws and regulations, social forms, and the image of political parties. Thus, the reality of corruption is often hidden. The data can only show the corruption that has been found or detected in the context of a hidden society concerned about corrupt practice. The means, media, and replacement conditions of corruption are becoming more intelligent as the process of an object. To avoid investigation and publishment, the subjective of corruption will go around relations, seeking protection umbrellas, and constructing a network of corruption entered on social relations and power states, then rely on it to gain up politically and formed a community of interest in the economy with shared benefits and risks, which usually leads to the corruption throughout the industry with cohesion, stability, and inclusivity. Now that the definition of corruption is somewhat clear, one is left wondering why public servants could be corrupt. Is it possible that there is still some leeway in the system, aside from the official motives for corruption, and why does government corruption exist at all?
Why do government officials abuse their positions to commit corruption, and why are business executives involved? What kind of psychology and motives do they have? Next, I will explore the main causes of corruption. The root causes of corruption in China is cultural factor. That means 关系 culture. China has a long-standing ethical tradition that emphasizes the importance of personal relationships, known as 关系. People tend to believe that having connections makes things easier and view relationships as more important than rules. Some officials, driven by considerations of personal relationships, abuse their power to help friends and relatives achieve their goals, benefiting themselves and maintaining a positive social image in front of their acquaintances. Here is a case study. In 2014, Su Rong was investigated for corruption. His wife frequently used his authority to promote acquaintances. His sons also intervened in the appointment and removal of officials in Jiangxi province. The family-style corruption of their 14-member family turned the sales of official positions into a complete industry chain. This case fully reflects the potential corruption of personal relationships driven by China's relationship culture. The motivation for corruption is economic factor. The negative impact of market economic on officials' ideology. The advent of the market economics stimulated market vitality and efficiency, but also increased the wealth gap, leading to some public officials' psychological imbalance and the negative mentality of blind pursuit of profit and abuse of power, treating maximum interests as their own demands. Conditions for corruption are politics factors. First, executive workload and at the grassroots level. Since the 18th National Congress of the CCP, the central government has promoted strict governance of the party. However, measures such as performance appraisal and accountability have significantly improved the efficiency of grassroots government, but have also invisibly promoted a more work, more mistake, less work, fewer mistakes atmosphere, leading to administrative inaction and soft corruption. Second, lack of regulatory bodies and efforts. In the context of rapid economic development, institutional supply and policy regulations often lag behind. In practice, many industries lack regulatory oversight, where policies are flexible and lack specific operational norms, resulting in highly centralized power and easy branding of corruption. Finally, low cost of anti-corruption efforts. The benefits of corruption are greater than the costs of anti-corruption efforts, which is the direct driving force behind corrupt behavior. In some places, local protectionism provides, protecting the so-called big taxpayers and key heroes. The premise of corruption are psychological patterns. Research indicates that corrupt psychology is the root cause of corrupt behavior, and corrupt phenomena are the products of certain psychological states that accumulate over time. Based on past research, corruptive psychology can be roughly categorized as follows. A compensation mentalities. Corruption stemming from a compensation mentality refers to officials who engage in corrupt behavior in order to compensate for factors that leave them dissatisfied. They believe that they deserve more compensation, leading to an internal sense of imbalance and a desire to seek more benefits by violating rules. Second, a comparison mentality. Some officials have a desire to maintain a good image and engage in extravagant living, but their economic conditions can't support such a lifestyle. In order to continue to maintain the image and win out in comparison to others, they engage in corporate behavior. A mentality of lack. That means officials believe they have powerful backing that allows them to ignore rules and legal constructs without being held accountable for their actions. Additionally, scholars have found that some individuals develop a mentality of lack, believing they are careful and clever enough to operate outside of supervision and avoid detection. A mentality of indulgence. Since 2023, several cities in Shandong province have publicly exposed the typical cases of hedonism and extravagance. Some officials engage in corrupt behavior due to a mentality of indulgence, such as accepting illegal gifts and shopping carts from service recipients, improperly granting allowances and misusing official vehicles. Weak willpower and the mentality of conformity. For officials with weak willpower, learning that others easily gain material benefits from corruption can create a psychological imbalance. If they can do it, why can't I? Consequently, they disregard party discipline and national laws, blindly conform, and join in corrupt activities. Lack of self-control and addiction to corruption. Officials who engage in corruption over a long period of time may develop a dependency on this pattern of acquiring wealth. They become accustomed to satisfying their material desires through corruption and continuously derive a sense of fulfillment from it. The new corrupt mentality of being willing to be hunted. It is a psychological state resulting from officials accepting corruption and removing their self-defense mechanisms. It reduces the guilt associated with corrupt behavior, motivates corruption, and essentially serves as a form of self-realization for corruption. Overall, corrupt behavior is usually influenced not only by individual psychological factors, but also by the interaction of multiple layers of corrupt psychology.
We have analyzed the cause of corruption from different angles. So is corruption an institutional, a political, an economic, or a cultural problem? We will answer this question in part 3. China's long history of feudalism and deep-rooted traditional thinking have affected many leading cadres, but whether it is the privileged, patriarchal, and authoritarian culture of feudal traditional culture or the individualism, money worship, and hedonism of capitalist culture, all of them are rooted in certain political systems, social environments, and material bases, which can either aggravate the degree of corruption or directly lead to the emergence of corruption without the creation of culture. So corruption is not a single cultural problem. Traditional economics generally believe that corruption is negatively correlated with economic growth, but Professor William, in the analysis of China's corruption phenomenon, got double paradox. The high incidence of corruption and rapid economic growth coexist. So the high incidence of corruption will promote economic growth? No, this argument is due to the lack of the understanding of the root cause of corruption and the mechanism by which corruption and economic growth work. According to the course's new institutional economic school, people always exist as economic men, and the pursuit of maximizing their own interest in the basic motivate of economic man behavior. When the arrangement of public system makes the cost of corruption far lower than its benefit, corruption behavior may become the choice of a considerable part of government officials. However, serious corruption often stems from loopholes or flaws in the political system, such as state, economics, legal institution construction, and so on. I will analyze specific issues at the level of institutional design and operation. The first one is, in China, the thought of the rule of man has a long history. The system design of our country is too dependent on individuals and lack preventive measures against the abuse of power. Once the execution power falls into the hands of deviated people, corruption will spread. In today's political society, people shout out the slogan, democracy. When the People's Republic of China was founded, it was clear that the people were the master of the country, but because of the lack of specific guarantees, the design of people being the masters of the country was blurred. The power of democratic supervision will easily lead to the corruption. One of the manifestations of excessive concentration of power is unified leadership. With highly overlapping decision-making, executive and supervisory powers, in recent years, the phenomenon of top leaders' corruption at all levels have attracted much attention, and one of the reasons for it is the excessive concentration of power. China has an institution of one government and two chambers under the People's Congress as the highest organ of power, even if this design also have a certain intention of decentralization and restriction. Under the unified power structure, the restriction between powers is virtually empty, and absolute power will become the soil of breeding corruption. The top-level design of the institution is the foundation, while how it operates is the key. The first one is the inadequate transparency. Only by making the operation of power fully transparent can some of the deficiencies in institutional design be eliminated. The second one is a lack of supervision. The weakness of the supervision mechanism, the lack of anti-corruption efforts, as well as the negligence of the relevant personnel to perform their duties and other issues, make it difficult for corporate behavior to be sectioned. Next, in China's reality, the phenomenon of non-compliance with the law has been seen from time to time, affecting the realization of systems' operational goals. The abuse of power, illegal administration, favoritism, judicial injustice have become the way of behavior that breeds corruption. The last problem is that there was a law but no governance. As the implementation of the system, many officials still have the power over the law, habits in the mind. Based on the current situation, although the corruption phenomenon in our country is currently elevated in a certain extent due to the institution construction in a long time lag in the development, the selection system is not scientific enough, the government system is not open enough, the supervision system is not comprehensive enough, the penalty system is not thorough enough, resulting the corruption in essence has become an important institutional problem.
The next part, I will talk about why it is important to fight corruption in China. Firstly, let's look at international corruption cases. In order to examine the impact of corruption experience on the perception of legitimacy of the political system, we shall explore survey data from 4 Latin American nations that score highly on global index of corruption. The study discovered that corruption led to a decline in public trust in the political system, which in turn impacts the legitimacy of the region, regardless of socio-economic status or demographic. The study also demonstrates how corruption weakens interpersonal trust, which is likely to have a negative impact of ties between the civil society and the state. Secondly, the complex problem of corruption in China history and its serious effects are a necessity to fight corruption. After the founding of New China, corruption slowly began to emerge. By the 1960s, when China had a planned economy and a centralized political system, corruption was mainly found in the bureaucracy and state-owned enterprises. Increasing mass movements showed corruption underground. In the 1950s, China launched a campaign called the Four Cleanups, which aimed to remove corrupt elements from state organs and party organizations. The campaign exposed a number of corruptions and bureaucratic problems. By the lack of effective leadership and supervision of mass movements led to a series of wrongful evictions and serious disruptions in social order. After the reform and opening up of China in 1978, the distribution of resources, collusion between business and the government, trading in power and money, and bribery and embezzlement become more and more serious. In 1989, the Ministry of Railway Embezzlement case revealed the seriousness of the problem of corruption in the system of officials in China, which involved several high-ranking officials and billions money. After the establishment of the market economy in 1992, China experienced rapid economic development and market-oriented reforms, and the problem of corruption has further expanded and complicated, with more and more serious officials become corrupt, involving the government, enterprises, institutions, even the military and the judicial system. For example, in 1998, Guangdong Sea, Land and Air case was one of the largest military corruption cases in modern China, involving 46 senior officials and military cadres from the 3 branches of military. And one analysis in 2008 also represents of China's much more widespread corruption. In 2012, Xi Jinping became president of PRC. He proposed a comprehensive and strict rule of the party and promoted a series of anti-corruption initiatives and campaigns. This period saw a proliferation of major corruption cases, particularly in the financial sector, which extended beyond national borders, with many senior officials transferring funds overseas and using financial havens to avoid taxes. Third, the importance and urgency of fighting corruption is the serious harm it causes. Since the concept of corruption arose in China, there has been an endless stream of corruption problems in the country, which have taken many different forms, affected a wide range of areas, and involved huge sums of money, and had a very significant impact on the country's development. Firstly, corruption led to political instability and the legitimacy crisis of the region. It not only highlights the efficiency and effectiveness of government, but also damages the image of government through the abuse of power by public officials. Secondly, corruption undermines peaceful transition to democracy. Widespread corruption also made the class of people who get vested interest to go for political struggle and hinder the peaceful way of democracy. Besides, corruption causes waste and improper allocation of public resources, disrupt market competition, undermine production, investment, and hinder economic development. Fourth, fighting corruption is an important political task and key to governance of the CPC. The CPC is a revolutionary political party dedicated to achieve China's national independence, people's liberation, and socialist construction. Self-revolution occupies an important strategic position in the CPC's philosophy of governance, and its political, missionary, and global nature is significantly reflected in anti-corruption work. Besides, it believes that corruption is a product of capitalist society, a manifestation of class exploitation and oppression, and one of the key of the success or failure of the police rule. Therefore, in the history and theory of the CPC, anti-corruption is one of the important elements of class struggle and party building, and is inextricably linked to other political tasks and endeavors. By strengthening anti-corruption work, the CPC can improve the ideological awareness and moral quality of the party members and cadres, purify the party's internal political ecology, safeguard the authority and credibility of the party and the government, consolidate the party's ruling foundation and mass base, and promote the development of the cause of socialism with Chinese characteristics.
Part 5 is on corruption prevention and control measures in China. The negative impact of corruption is so great that China has been focusing on corruption control since the founding of the country and has made many initiatives to date. In short, corruption governance in China has shifted from a campaign-based approach to a rule of law approach. In 1951, CCP decided to carry out the Three Anti-Corruption Campaign, which was the first shoot against the corruption fight in New China. In 1978, CCP put forward the idea of insisting on reform and opening up with one hand and punishing corruption with the other. In 1982, CCP made the decision on combating serious criminal activities in the economic field. In 1997, the CCP emphasized the need to adhere to the three work patterns of leading cadres, cleanliness, and self-discipline, investigating and dealing with major cases, and correcting unethical practice in departments and industries. In 2013, Xi Jinping proposed that the tigers and the flies should be fought together. In June 2014, China set up an international office for the pursuit of fugitives, and in November, the Beijing Declaration on Anti-Corruption was adopted. In 2015, the Skynet operation began. These are changes in the anti-corruption department that have been added, merged, and removed. And in addition to the diagram, there are two other points that need to be added. The addition of the Anti-Corruption Bureau within the National Public Prosecutor's Office in 1995, and the National Agency for the Prevention of Corruption was established in 2007. In the construction of China's corruption governance system modernization, 2018 is one of the most critical turning points. In 2018, the National Supervisory Commission of the PRC was set up, performs the two functions of discipline inspection and supervision. Supervision law of the PRC was also passed, which clarifies the leadership of the CCP in state supervision. In 2017, its provisions was enacted. Obviously, there has been a surge in the number of officials who have been investigated and punished since then. But even in the face of the crackdowns, the number of corrupt officials in China remains high. It means that there may still be some problems with corruption governance in China. Firstly, legal and institutional issues. China has anti-corruption legislation has long been corruption first and legislation second. The large number of regulation is fragmented and there is no corruption-specific legislation, creating a large number of discrete and conflicting systems that provide opportunities for corruption. In addition, the low level of effectiveness of some regulations has led to a lack of authority to punish corruption. Second, prevention issues. The focus of corruption governance in China tends to be on accountability and punishment after corruption occurs, and to a certain extent the prevention aspect has been neglected, with fewer policies and systems being formulated to address the causative factors of corruption. making the risk of corruption pre-existing. Third, mass participation. Systems of government information disclosure, public participation procedures, and decision-making hearing procedures have not yet been implemented. The inequality between social organization and public power also makes it more difficult for the public to participate in the governance of corruption. And here are our references. Thanks.